What's up, Wizards? It's Dub. Mtg. We like it a magic. If you hear a fat bass line in the background, that's my new neighbors. Thank them. But I don't blame them. It's a party. We got some weekend Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers to look at. Sounds like a good time. So let's go ahead and get to it. No, we didn't get too much over the weekend to look at. Just 12 cards plus another one I want to go back and look at because I missed it earlier. It's a good card. You'll see in just a second. Don't worry. But that said, we did get a lot of cool cards to look at. The latter half of this list, no shade to the first half, but the latter half of this list is actually comprised of like interesting cards that also look kind of powerful because I know that's important to some people. So let's go ahead and get to it with Deep Cavern Bat. This is 1 and a black for a 1/1 flying lifelink bat. When it enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it until Deep Cavern Bat leaves the battlefield. Kinda like a Kite Sail freebooter. I see what you did there, but instead of the extra point of toughness, we get lifelink, which I like. But the more important difference is that we can take any non-land card. Kite Sail freebooter didn't hit creatures, which is always like slightly lame, but didn't keep it from seeing play. It just feels like a strict upgrade to freebooter in a lot of ways, right? I mean, I know it only has the 1 toughness, but in standard right now, that doesn't feel like a huge deal. In other environments with Orcish Bowmasters, it kind of does. But in standard, not that big of a deal. Plus, just like freebooter, the best part of freebooter, if they do use a removal spell on it, which they kind of want to do, feels like they wasted their removal spell. You know, I can think of a bunch of other creatures in black decks right now that they might rather use that go for the throat on, but if they have to, they absolutely will. So this has always been a sweet effect, and I don't think the loss of a desirable creature type is going to be that big of a deal. Card's going to be good. That's the card that I missed from a couple of days ago, and it's actually one of the better cards in this video, but there is good stuff. That said, we got to look at stuff like Rampaging Ceratops and Colossal Leech and Colossadactyl. A lot of colossal stuff in this video at the beginning, but Rampaging Ceratops is just 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 5/4 dino that can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. So like super menace, but still not that impressive. Come on. So what else you got, Dev? Don't worry, I got plenty. Here's Colossal Leech, 7 and a black for a 5/5 lifelink leech that costs 1 less to cast for each cave you control and each cave that's in your graveyard. So I guess if I have an untapped cave on turn 4, I can get this 5/5 lifelink. That seems pretty good until you remember that all caves tend to come into play tapped. Now that we did get a card Spelunking that you play on turn 3 and make your caves come into play untapped, it seems okay, but you're doing a lot of work just for your 4 mana 5/5 lifelink. But I guess you could dump a bunch of lands into your graveyard, and then maybe on turn 3 you get a 3 mana 5/5 lifelink. This is all Christmas land stuff, but it is a good place to live. I like it there. All that said, looks like a limited playable thing that's going to cost you 4 or 5 mana a lot of the time and not come along until the mid game, but it's still going to be a stout little body. A 5/5 lifelink can do a lot for you in limited. Then again, just a quick disclaimer, if the Caves deck turns out to be super broken and this is a 1 mana 5/5 lifelink on turn 3 or something like that, then yeah, it's amazing, but I really don't see that happening. And then Colossadactyl over here, just a big fat pile of stats, man. He's 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 4/5 dinosaur with reach and the trample. Pretty good. I don't think it's breaking into standard anytime soon. We got better options at 4 mana, but pretty, actually kind of good when you really think about it. I mean, it's the decent abilities. Trample's always good. I like reach for what it's worth, and stats are there for 4 mana. I mean, pretty good uncommon in limited in terms of stats, so you're going to be seeing it a lot there. Let's keep it moving and look at Self-Reflection, Bloodthorn Flail, and Nikanzel, a cool little Simic legend, but we'll get to them. Let's look at Self-Reflection first. 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Flashback for 3 and a blue. I get it, I've seen this card before. This is Cackling Counterpart, except the flashback cost is less than the mana cost. It's also Croaking Counterpart, and also quasi-duplicate. All I'm saying is this card's been printed a bunch, and it rarely does too much in standard, and I really don't expect it to do too much now because we've had Croaking Counterpart forever. But quick disclaimer here, just like I've already done with the card this video, if this becomes like the basis for some amazing combo in standard, then I take it all back. The card was incredible all along, but I really don't see that happening anytime soon. We've had this effect before, and although it is a cool effect, I'm not sure it's going to be enough. I'm sorry, just one more thing about this card before I move on, because it's bugging me, and I know it's going to bug some people in the comments section. You can still point it out if you want to. It helps with my engagement. But still, I have to say that one way that this is different than Croaking Counterpart that might make it relevant in standard is A, it doesn't make 1/1s, obviously. That's kind of cool. But B, it can copy the token when you flash it back out of your graveyard, so that's kind of nice. Might be a cool little payoff for if you're like self-milling yourself or something, because the flashback cost is, you're just really casting Clone. Is Clone good enough in standard? Probably not, but still. It could be a payoff for those decks. Altogether looks like a cool card. I'm not taking that away from it, but probably not like super playable. Is a cool name for a card though, let me say that much, but I'll shut up about it and move on to the next card now. It's Bloodthorn Flail. I hit the TH a little hard there because I've had to do 3 or 4 takes in a row now, so I keep calling this card Bloodborne Flail because, you know, video games. It's a single black mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+1. You can equip it by paying 3 mana or discarding a card. Just reprint Unholy Strength. Just like do it, you know. But I guess this does stuff Unholy Strength doesn't do. It stays on the battlefield, first of all, when the creature dies, which is kind of important. But more importantly, in some cases, it's an artifact. And I think some decks will kind of dig that a little bit. But we'll see if all those aspects of it are important enough for it to see play. But a single mana, and lets you discard a card. Lets you discard a card, but it seems like a fairly free but sorcery speed discard outlet to me, and that seems okay in certain decks, right? So let's not put that past it either. I just kind of like this. I think it has applications that are outside of like, I make a guy big, you know, so I think that's cool about it, and I think that's where it's going to shine the most is if you can figure out how to use the discard on it or how to actually use the fact that it's an artifact. I think this might have some stuff going for it. It's a cool card. I like Unholy Strength. I'm a boomer. I'm sorry. And by the way, if you wanted yet another like wink, wink, nudge, nudge that Madness is going to be coming back in the next year or so, here you go. But let's move on to Nikanzel, the Current Conductor. This is a green and a blue for a 2/3 legendary Merfolk Scout. Whenever a creature you control explores a land card, it's a weird line of text, but stick with me. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Whenever a creature you control explores a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on Nikanzel, Current Conductor. I wonder if after a while of trying to template this card, they were like, screw it, this is how we're wording this ability, who cares? Because at first it was like, whenever a creature you control exploring would cause a land card to go into your graveyard from the top of your library. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. This is how we're wording it, baby. So I actually think this guy is kind of sweet. He requires some support. He can't do any of the things by himself, right? But if you do have some stuff exploring around him, then suddenly he can do some great stuff. He reminds me of a Wild Growth Walker, which is what I think he's supposed to remind you of, right? But a little bit different in all the right ways. Wild Growth Walker was a little bit broken, still is a little bit broken, and this guy could be too. Like, yes, I would love to ramp when I explore. Yes, I would love for this guy to be a 5/6 by like turn 3. That'd be awesome. So I'm pretty sure this guy might be able to do that. We keep waiting for like the explore payoff in this set. I think this is one of the better ones we've seen so far. So dude is cool. Does it make Simic playable in standard? I don't know what can, right? It's going to put like Dark Ritual in Simic somehow. It'd probably make it happen. But I don't know if this is the thing that finally makes it work. But one way or the other, the card is cool and it is an awesome Explorer payoff. Let's look at another cave payoff, why don't we? Let's jump back over there. I said there'd be a decent one in this video. Let's see if I'm lying to you. It's Bat Cavern. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying for each mana spent from a cave used to cast this spell. Whenever a cave enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Yet another payoff that doesn't actually do anything by itself, if you'll notice, but as long as you're able to play other things around it that synergize with it, then boom, you got it. It's just like the Explore guy we just looked at, but not that guy. So I like this guy, but first thing I need to say, I guess it's like the third thing I need to say because I've already said stuff, is that I know that Wizards of the Coast just struck a deal with Marvel. So what's this? This is obviously DC. What's going on here? The second thing I need to say is to regrettably repeat myself from earlier, right? If you played this on turn 3, well, you know, Cave's coming to play tapped. So it's pretty likely that you're only going to get 2 tokens off of this, which might still be okay, but it's nowhere near as good as getting 3 tokens on turn 3. If you can pull that off, I think the card is actually good. But it's easier said than done, and just like your dad, I'm not even sure it's doable, so I want this card to be good. I am kind of unreasonably excited for it, because I'm pretty sure it's not actually that great. But the Cave deck is getting some interesting payoffs, day by day. Now we're about to get to some stuff that looks really, really good to me, but before we do that, let's check in all the little nooks and crannies here. This is a single green mana for an enchantment. If a creature you control would explore, instead scry 1, and then that creature explores. When Nooks and Crannies enters the battlefield, target creature you control explores. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, transform Nooks and Crannies into Mycoid Labyrinth. It's a cave, and you can tap it for a green mana. But you can also pay 3 and a green and tap it to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put the card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so this is a search for Azcanta in some ways. I think that's what it's supposed to remind you of at the very least. But probably not as good. Let's be honest with ourselves here. That said, even though I don't personally think this is as good as Search for Azcanta was, I mean, come on, right? This is still really, really awesome, right? You don't even have to be like in an Explorer deck for this to be decent, because unlike some of the other cards we've already looked at today that are in the Cave deck or the Explorer deck, this actually does the thing. It's self-contained. You see how it cares when something explores, but then also makes a thing explore. That's so nice. Now, you mostly do want this in a deck that's going to explore more than once, but 1 green mana, scry 1, potentially draw a land. That's actually pretty good in a deck that's going to have 7 lands eventually. When it does have 7 lands, you get another one. It wants lands, so that's kind of nice in and of itself. But also being able to find like the big thing, you know, the Atraxa at instant speed, by the way. You can activate this whenever you want, again, just like a Search for Azcanta. So end of your opponent's turn, you're not finding the counter spell or the removal spell the way Search was, but you are finding the big threat to end the game with. And that's going to be important, I think, in some decks. So I'm not barring this from seeing play, again, even outside of Explore decks, because Atraxa decks can play this on turn 1. They actually have a turn 1 play now. You know, apart from Triomes, they're still going to play a bunch of tapped Triomes in their decks. Do they really want to play this? I'm not too sure. But on turn 1 or 2, they go ahead and get this down, and before too long, it's flipped over. It's just by a course of how the deck plays. I actually think that some ramp decks in Standard might lean on this just a little bit, but I'm not sure how many copies are going to end up seeing play. But yet another quick disclaimer right here, because this could be way better than I'm calling it here. I could just be a big dumb cough, and this is amazing. I've already compared it to Search for Azcanta. How good do you want me to call it, right? So I actually don't think this card is terrible at all, but it could end up being even better than I think it is. But all that said, let's move on to some premium removal. That's an easy call to make, isn't it? Everybody likes that. This is Dusk Rose Reliquary, a single white mana for an artifact. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Bummer. This thing has ward too. And when it enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls until Reliquary leaves the battlefield. Okay, so this, or Rite of Oblivion, which doesn't already see too much standard play, but I like that you can cast Rite twice, but this is only a single mana. It's also an artifact, which I've already brought up a couple times in this video, could actually matter, especially considering we keep seeing these like relatively high impact artifacts that are all just 1 mana. Either way, the Bartholomew deck is going to like this a good bit. The Elasil Core deck, the Vron deck, who am I kidding? They're all the exact same deck. They're all in the same pile of cards, but that deck, the Aristocrats deck, is going to maybe actually exist. It's going to be in large part because of cards like this, but it's getting plenty of pieces in this set. But even outside of like a dedicated Aristocrats deck, this is just a sweet piece of removal that costs a single mana to wipe out 2 different permanent types. Not too bad. And a little bit later on in this video, I should go ahead and tell you, we're going to preview the absolute perfect card to sacrifice to this. So can't wait till we get there. It's actually my favorite card of the day, but we got other stuff in between, so let's go ahead and keep going. Up next on the list, this is a guy I'm freaking out about. It's Belligerent Yearling. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 3/2 dinosaur with trample. Whenever another dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Belligerent Yearling's base power become equal to that creature's power until end of turn. Ooh, the other day I was just saying that Dinosaurs needs a good 2-drop or 2 to be as aggressive as it wants to be and all that. If you're going to be like a creature type matters deck in the current environment, you have to be like super aggressive to make that work. And this is the 2-drop the Dinosaurs deck wanted. It might need another one before it's all said and done, but boy, ooh, if you can play like a 4-power dinosaur on turn 3, suddenly you're slamming 3 for 4 trample on 3. It seems pretty good to me, man. So it's all right. And then, of course, the later into the game you get on turn 4, turn 5, suddenly this thing's power is like 5 or 6. You can even follow this on the next turn with that new, Hammer Skull, whatever its face is. It's a 3 mana 6/6, and then suddenly you slam in for 6 trample on 3. Let's freaking go, dude. So, like, the deck is actually looking really, really aggressive, and I like that. This guy's awesome. But speaking of red cards, let's move on to maybe my favorite red card in the set so far. Is that a true statement? I'm pretty sure it is. This is Magmatic Gallion. Holy ship. This thing is amazing. It's 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 5/5 artifact, which is also a vehicle. When Magmatic Gallion enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target creature an opponent controls. Whenever 1 or more creatures your opponents controlled are dealt excess non-combat damage, create a treasure token, and it accrues for just 2. Now, 5 mana can be a lot to get to, even in Standard. I'm first to acknowledge that. 5 mana cards have to be really, really good in Standard to be playable. Luckily, this is. I don't know if you've read the card yet. Did you hear me back there when I was reading the card to you? The card's very good. To me, the decision on whether or not to play the card is not that interesting. I'm playing the card. There, we did it. But all the interesting decisions happen after you put the card in your deck, right? Like now that this is in my deck, if I get Charming Scoundrel on 2, do I make it a 1/1 and get a treasure token to ramp into this? Or do I make it a 2/2 so it can crew this when it eventually comes down? What a fun decision. But most of the creatures in your deck can crew this. So I'm pretty sure it's pretty easy to get this thing swinging. And in the meantime, it's like making you treasure tokens when you point a lightning strike at a 1 toughness creature or 2 toughness creature. So sometimes it's going to make treasure beyond the first treasure that it made you. And I think that's going to happen more often than you think. So that also seems good. Imagine they point a Boseiju at it. Who cares? I killed your guy and got a treasure token. So like, sure, you killed my thing, but I got plenty out of that investment. This card is very good is all I'm saying. I don't know if I've made that clear enough, but yeah. 5 mana is a ton, don't care. Card's awesome. But to finish things off here, let's look at my favorite card of the whole weekend. Maybe not the most powerful card of the weekend, but definitely the best, subjectively, in my opinion. And that's what matters. It's my channel. So let's look at Market Gnome here. This is just a single white mana for a 0/3 artifact creature, which is also a gnome. And when it dies, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. If it exiles from the battlefield while you're activating a crafting ability, you also gain 1 life and draw a card. Okay, so it wants you to craft it, obviously, but don't get hung up on that. As a matter of fact, just pretend that line of text is not there at all. You'll use it sometimes. I'm not saying I know that my hand goes behind the card when I do this. I'm not stupid, but pretend I'm covering up the text on the card when I do that. There, here, edit. I'll just use editing here. Thank you. Any case, thanks editing dev, which is it's just me, but one way or the other. Just pretend that other line of text isn't there, and it's still a 1 mana 0/3. When it dies, gain a life, draw a card. That's really good. Goes really nicely with that new portable hull. What's it called? Dusk Rose Reliquary. Guys, we just looked at it earlier. It goes really nicely with that. But also, you're going to sack this to Bartholomew over and over. I'm pretty sure. I mean, if you wanted like sack fodder, you know, in the past, we've had to look at like Doom Traveler and we have like Insolent Neonate and stuff like that. And we got decent cards in Standard for sack fodder. You know, we got like Voldire and Epic here. Hey, that did a damage, left behind some value with a blood token and all that. Like, there are decent sack fodder things in Standard. Like, I was just looking at the stupid harried spear guard last set, like, oh, that's a good creature in Aristocrats, because like that's how much my brain, that's how much I'm jonesing for like an actual decent like dude that wants to be sacrificed and just costs a single mana. And here we are, we finally got it. They knew we wanted the deck, they knew what pieces we needed, they just didn't give it to us. Right? So here we are. This isn't going to do a whole lot of damage on offense, obviously, but who cares about offense? Not only can this be awesome in the Aristocrats deck as a 1-drop, but imagine this in like that mono white mid-range deck that keeps going around with the Wedding Announcements and the Wandering Emperors and the Farewells and blah. Imagine this in that deck. You know, it seems good. They already play like Ambitious Farmhand and sometimes Spirited Companion. And this is just kind of a Spirited Companion. In a lot of ways that blocks better some of the time, you know, just brick walls some aggro decks in the early game, which is sweet. But if it does have to die on blocks, it's paying you back a lot, dude. So this is my favorite card of the weekend, and maybe one of my favorite cards in the set. Like, don't be surprised we get to the top 25 if this card somehow makes its way into the top 10. That's how much I like it. Also a gnome. Just seemed like I wanted to point that out. But it is also, last time in this video, I hope, probably, why else would I do it? It's also an artifact. And that's going to matter. We've already seen like some stuff that triggers when artifacts go to the graveyard. And like, I guess it works with Food Fight. I mean, anything that works with Food Fight, I'm happy about. So a really sweet egg. Just think of it like this is kind of an egg that you crack. Just a single 1 mana for an artifact. You crack it and something good happens. It's an addition to those decks too. So I think this could go back and see play in some other things is all I'm saying. But, you know, maybe it's even like half decent in Commander if you're just looking for like artifacts to sacrifice. So I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that I'm just saying, but in Standard, this is ridiculous sack fodder. And just a sweet chump blocker if you have a rare, mostly defensive deck that's looking to get into the mid or late game. So there's a bunch of decks that already fit that bill in Standard. I know that you probably don't want to play 1 million copies of this guy, but don't be surprised if you want to play like 2, because I think he's really that good, man. I think I'm done talking about him now. I just want to talk about him for the next hour, pad this video out. We've been doing hour-long videos all spoiler season anyway. We can just keep it going with all the stuff you can do with this guy, but I'm going to keep it under under wraps for now. I've got plenty to say about this dude before it's all said and done, I'm sure. But we just did our reload on Mythic Spoiler, and it appears as though those are all of the cards from the weekend. But if I'm looking at the spoiler schedule right, it looks like there's going to be a bunch more on Monday, which is probably when you're going to end up watching this video anyway. So later on today, probably tonight, don't worry. Just don't go to sleep. It's not big. Who cares? Who needs sleep? So don't go to sleep, and that video will upload at like midnight or 1 a.m. tonight, and you just have more spoilers. All within the same 24-hour period. Can you imagine? But anyway, I think I'm actually done for this one. So just let me know how you felt about all the stuff down there in the comments section. There are some juicy cards over the weekend, man. In case you were sleeping on the spoilers over the weekend, wake up, honey, because there's some really good stuff in there. Just let me know how you felt about all the things. But aside from that, do all the YouTube stuff. You know, hit the like button, subscribe, I guess. If you haven't done that by now, I probably am not going to convince you to do it. But just in case, one more time, go ahead and sub, baby. We're trying to get to 200,000 subs. We just need 70K left. We already got 70K almost twice. We can get 70K again. Just be one of the people that does the thing. But anyway, you can also check out the Twitch. We're going to be doing maybe one more night of spoilers over there on Twitch. Could be Wednesday night. We'll see. Get ready for it. It's free to follow. You can also check out the Patreon. Just $1 a month to vote on what decks we're going to do during old Lost Caverns of Ixalan Standard. And it's also just $1 a month, right, to support the channel, which means a lot to me. And I need a lot. I so much, but anyway, I guess that's basically all the rambling I have to do. So again, it's your turn. Go ahead, go down in the comments section. Let me know how you felt about the things, and I will catch you cats later. I am dead from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.